bike people! Today I bring you the most important piece of mountain bike history that you can possibly get your hands on. So these days, mountain bikes are technological marvels. They've got pneumatics, hydraulics, electronics, everything on them, and most of the higher end models you see have rear suspension. Now, that's not a new concept. Suspension on bicycles has been around since before the original safety bike design, but this particular style of suspension, mountain bike suspension, this is a more recent development in the bike world. So a little context, mountain biking started with Charlie Kelly, Joe Breeze, Gary Fisher, those guys having fun building up clunkers, which were old Schwinn cruiser bikes modified with motorcycle parts to do what they called the repack run, which was a downhill run that was absolutely intense. It was the pinnacle of mountain biking in its day. Now that spawned the popularity of the sport, and it grew from there and turned into its own bespoke sport separate from BMX bikes and other forms of aggressive riding. Now Gary Fisher himself, he's one of the OGs of mountain biking. He's responsible for making it what it is now. So this isn't the first bike he designed, but this is by far one of the most significant. Until this bike, all full suspension mountain bikes were kind of one-off prototypes, or just something that had been made in a garage. They weren't serious production models. This was the first one to go into full production and be reliable and also be somewhat affordable. So this 4-bar linkage system here, this is the big deal. There's some little elastomer bushings in here that allow it to travel a bit more like a modern Softail, but it has the pivots here and here and here and here. But this 4-bar system designed by Mert Lowell is sourced from sports cars and motorcycles back in the day, and it really works well on this kind of bike. And with this shot you can see the inner pivots of the system and the elastomer bushings in there. That all allows this to work and pivot properly. And look at the size of the roller bearing on this pivot here. That's pretty awesome. So parts-wise, this bike also has a lot of really cool features that you wouldn't expect to see on a bike from 1992. Some of the more predictable ones are going to be the Shimano Dior XT drivetrain. It's got the Tytech stem, it's got the Onza bar ends, it's got the RockShox Judy DH fork, all some of the craziest high-end parts from its day. But the bits that really fascinate me, the Campagnolo front derailleur, the Campagnolo rear hub, and the Campagnolo disc brake. So I'm not quite as sure on the history regarding the disc brake as I am regarding the suspension, but this is made by Campagnolo, and this is one of the earliest designs for a disc brake on a mountain bike. So you can see in principle it works pretty similar to a modern disc brake. This arm here has a spring inside, it pushes like that, and forces the pads in there against this rotor. Now I'm really disappointed this particular example is too damaged to be ridden. The disc here threads onto the hub, but it's cracked all the way through there, so the hub's not engaging with the threads on this disc, meaning this just pivots kind of freely. There's not enough to actually, make it stop safely. You can see right there the crack running through this. That's just letting everything inside expand too much for the threads to engage. They're really disappointed this isn't working for now, but I gotta say, looking at it, it looks like it would have given a lot of power when it was actually functional. And on principle, it looks pretty similar to modern disc brake designs. It looks like it just needs a bit more refinement from this idea to reach what we have these days. So obviously in 2021, suspension on mountain bikes is much more refined than it was when this bike was released in 1992. But you can see how this was the source material for those modern bikes, how this design based on motorcycles and sports cars created the inspiration for modern suspension on mountain bikes. The Gary Fisher RS1, this is the origin story of modern mountain bikes as you know them. And there's one last little tidbit here. Back in the day when Gary Fisher was still involved enough with the bike companies to visit his dealers, he came by this store and he saw this bike and he was so impressed that we actually had one of these. He signed this postcard for us. So it's a little faded from age, but that is our postcard signed by Gary Fisher himself, because he appreciates this bike and he knows its significance because he's the guy who made it.